All right, all right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Hot Seat Automotive Podcast. It's your buddy CJ here. And tonight, we're talking about a legendary automotive enthusiast destination. Are you kidding me? Tail of the Dragon. Motorcycle enthusiasts, car enthusiasts. We've all heard about it. Many of us have been there. We've driven it. If we haven't, we want to, or maybe we're thinking about it. Tail of the Dragon, folks. We're talking about 11 miles of mountain road, 318 turns and curves, plenty of twisties, intense engagement for the real motorcycle enthusiast and the real automotive enthusiast who's all about the driving experience. Actually, high intensity, mountain driving, real roads, treacherous, dangerous, all of the above. Tonight, Hot Seat Automotive Podcast, let's break it down. Let's get into the history of Tail of the Dragon. Listen, every great automotive, car guy, motorcycle story has an origin. And tonight on the podcast, we're going to talk about some of the origins of Tail of the Dragon based on what we know. I'm going to tell you what my experience was like, real talk, real gearhead talk. I'm going to tell you about my first experience on Tail of the Dragon, what it was like, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'll be real with you. You guys know your buddy CJ always keeps it real. I'm going to be honest about that. I'm going to give you some recommendations for anyone who's new to the Tail of the Dragon. Whether you're a car guy or a motorcycle guy, whether you're thinking about it, or maybe, gee whiz, you've been there and you're checking out my episode tonight, come on, give me a like and subscribe. Give me those comments. Let me know what you think about Tail of the Dragon. Did I get everything right? Did I miss anything? Do you guys feel differently? We have fun around here on this channel, guys. This is the place to be where we get into all these things: automotive enthusiasts, motorcycle enthusiasts, destinations, events, cars, trucks, you name it. Guys, let's get right into it. Tonight, Tail of the Dragon. Are you kidding me? What are we talking about here? We're talking about, as I mentioned, a strip of road through the mountains and hills of North Carolina and Tennessee border, known officially as Route US 129. We're talking about the intersection of North Carolina Route 28 and US 129. Tennessee, North Carolina, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Okay? 11 miles and 318 turns. Let me say that again. Is this thing on? 11 miles, 318 turns. This is an intense road. This is not for the lighthearted. This is not for someone who likes just a leisurely cruise through the mountains, sort of lumbering along. Okay? This is not that. So first things first, stay away if that's your jam. Let's keep going. The history, guys. Deals Gap. This is an area known as Deals Gap. If we go back centuries, folks, let's go back in time tonight, shall we? Native Americans, Cherokee tribes, to be specific, finding pathways, trails, and routes through the mountains, living their early Native American lifestyle, and doing all the things. Can you imagine the history going back centuries as you're driving in your Miata or your Porsche or your GSXR, or your Harley through Tail of the Dragon? It's actually, if your brain can focus on anything else, it's actually fascinating to stop and think about what this area must have been like 400 years ago, right? It's just crazy, but it does go back that far, right? In addition to the Native Americans, think about the wild animals, right? Carving the paths and finding a way through the mountains to find a mate or to find prey. So that's really the origins of the mountain pass, or the route, the safe passage through the mountains. Long before there was a North Carolina, long before there was a Tennessee, there were passageways and pathways through this wilderness, through the wilds of North America. Are you kidding me? It's fascinating, right? Come on, let's keep going. At some point, there was a Deal family, by the way, Deal's Gap. We all talk about Deal's Gap. What the heck is Deal's Gap? Who's Deal? There was a Deal family, and the Deal family owned an outpost, okay, in the area that we've all been to and know about as Tail of the Dragon and Deal's Gap. There's the name, hence the name, right? Deal's Outpost, the store. Now, the family at some point headed west. They got out of it, but the name stayed. The name stuck, right? Civil War history in this area. For all the reasons that I mentioned earlier, safe passage and routes through the mountains, all along that area that is now today Route US 129, was navigated by soldiers during the Civil War, the site of conflicts, not only for the Civil War, but also between Native Americans and early American settlers. Trading, conflict, all of these things happened right there. So I think it's a very important point to nail home that, a visit to Tail of the Dragon has significance to motorsports and motorcycle enthusiasts and gearheads like us, but also significant historical relevance in our nation. Kind of interesting, I think. Let's fast forward, shall we? 1934. 1934, the route was paved and actually got a name, and the name was US 129. Officially, this became Route US 129. And I'll tell you what, guys, between 1934 and the 1950s, and then when you think about it, like 1950s post-war era, all the way up to, let's say, 1990, early 1990s, not a heck of a lot. What do I mean by that? One of the things that makes Tail of the Dragon in this stretch, Deal's Gap, so desirable to automotive enthusiasts and motorcycle riders and gearheads as a destination is that there's not a lot of, it's remote. It's adjacent to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So there's no houses, okay? There's no turnoffs. There's no residential streets. There's no shopping centers in the 11-mile stretch. It's unencumbered. It's, there's not a bunch of merging traffic and intersections. Okay? So with all of that said, between the 1950s and 1990, let's say, there wasn't a lot of traffic. This was not a heavily trafficked area. And most Americans probably had no idea what Route 129 Deal's Gap was, right? If you think about 1950s America, kind of interesting, right? Post-war, the rise of the motorcycle hobby, the rise of motorcycle clubs, motorcycle enthusiasts, going out on road trips, that type of thing. If you think about post-Vietnam era, lots of, again, GIs coming home, soldiers, veterans, picking up the motorcycle hobby, okay? The rise of the automotive enthusiast, road trippers, right? The rise of the highway system in the United States, the federal highway system, interstate, so on and so forth. You had a lot of really interesting things happening post-World War II over the decades leading up to 1990. But not a lot was going on at what is today known as Tail of the Dragon, folks. History says that for hunters and fishermen, this was a spot in the region, and any of the local businesses kind of served the hunters and fishermen, but outside of that, there wasn't a lot going on. We've got to talk about 1992. 1992, folks. Who in the world is Doug Snavely? Doug Snavely is a very important person in the history of Tale of the Dragon. Motorcycle enthusiast Doug Snavely, 1992, out of Atlanta, Georgia. He became aware of Deal's Gap and this stretch of road, and he made the jaunt from the Atlanta, Georgia area up to Deal's Gap. And the man apparently fell in love with Deal's Gap. The beauty of the area, the roads, the unencumbered engagement of the 318 curves. Are you kidding me? Okay. Well, Doug had an idea. Let's say, make way, fishermen and hunters and other random travelers. Let's make this a destination for motorcycle enthusiasts, because Doug knew there was something there. Doug knew there was something there. There wasn't anything like this anywhere else in the country, maybe in the world, and he was right. It's a unique spot. So he met a fellow named Pete who was running the Crossroads of Time, and they came up with a plan to really promote this as a motorcyclist destination. And Doug Snavely started what was known as the Deal's Gap Hot Lap newsletter and the Deal's Gap Riding Society. And back when folks still used typewriters and copy machines, Xerox machines, and mailing out these newsletters, he actually established quite a following. This was long before Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Leave it to Doug Snavely. Give him some credit. The guy did it, right? And built up quite the following. Ridership for motorcyclists, primarily the riders, the hardcore motorcycle dudes, really began to rise at this time. And we can credit much of that, not all of it, but much of it, to Doug Snavely. That's the history, if you will. You know, a couple of other things to note is that this is an area that's rich in Hollywood history. Did you know that the film The Fugitive, the infamous Fugitive Bridge, where Harrison Ford jumps off the bridge, that was filmed right there in this area near Deal's Gap? Another classic film, Thunder Road, and Two-Lane Blacktop were all filmed in that area. So in addition to the American history, the Native American history, the Civil War history, the motorcycle enthusiast, and the automotive enthusiast history, you also have Hollywood history in Deal's Gap. How about that? Makes for a heck of a destination, doesn't it? I want to look at a couple of things because, you know, on this channel, in addition to talking a lot, and we do, we like to kind of study things together and look at them together. Come on, we have a lot of fun around here. Guys, having been to Tale of the Dragon, and many of you probably have, take a look at this snapshot. This is kind of what to expect. And I don't think there's really any way to fully prepare for an experience on Tale of the Dragon. You just kind of have to do it. There are things to be aware of. But look at that. Look at the road. Look at the curves. Look at the bends. Consider what it must be like to come around. For example, that turn there in the rear of the photo, if you will. It's blind. Look at the placement of the yellow line. Don't cross that yellow line. We'll get to that in a moment. You know, this is what to expect. High intensity curves, okay? So we'll come back to this in a moment for 11 miles. Guys, let's keep going. I want to show you a couple other things before I get into and tell you what my experience was on Tale of the Dragon. You know, guys, going back to the 1980s and even the early 90s, this is what you may have seen at Tale of the Dragon. This is a vintage photo of some motorcycle enthusiasts out there at Deal's Gap, and they're getting ready for a run. How about that? You see the vintage bikes, you see the vintage clothing. You know, a different time, perhaps, a different time. But again, a rich history with Tale of the Dragon that's rooted in motorcycle enthusiasts, really, in terms of the driving and riding experience. You know, I'm really a car guy. an automotive enthusiast. Those of you who know your buddy CJ, I have owned motorcycles years ago, but I'm really a car guy. But, when I first became aware of Tail the Dragon, it was not as a car guy and as a car destination, if that makes sense. I first heard about Tail the Dragon from my motorcycle friends. I have friends who are legit riders and true motorcycle dudes, okay, in every sense of the word. And I would hear about Tail of the Dragon. I'm like, Tail of the Dragon, what's that? That sounds corny. That sounds ridiculous. Is that even a thing? And turns out it was a thing. And at the time, I didn't think I'd ever go there. It was always like the motorcycle spot. And it's just something I became aware of probably 15, 20 years ago, to be honest with you. A long time before I ever visited and actually made the run, the 11-mile run in my own car. Kind of interesting. Leave me comments if you've had tell me how you first heard about Tail of the Dragon. Guys, let's take a look at this together. I want to, give credit to Doug Snaverly. Once again, here's an example of one of his vintage Deals Gap Hot Lap newsletters. And you could see, oh boy, a time when typewriters and handwritten newsletters were a thing. Was there even a time before the internet? Yes, there was. And this is an example of kind of how Doug and others spread the word about Tail of the Dragon long before Instagram and the Facebook groups. This is how word got around, which I think is just fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Guys, let's keep going. I want to show you something else here. The Tree of Shame. Can we talk about an element of Tail of the Dragon that we have to, which is kind of the elephant in the room, and that is the risk. And of course, there's some humor and just this legendary aspect that, dudes go down on Tail of the Dragon on bikes and dudes wreck in cars. But once you set aside the ego and the adrenaline and the machismo maybe of making the run and getting your battle scars, there's significant risk associated with this. Like, you can get into trouble on Tail of the Dragon. And we're going to talk about that. But the Tree of Shame is kind of a fun thing to take a look at. And this is where you might find pieces of Harley Davidson, pieces of Miatas and Corvettes and other cars. Guys, they go off the road, they wreck, they hit a tree, whatever it is. And parts of cars, trucks, motorcycles end up on the Tree of Shame. Some might consider it a badge of honor. But again, we've got to be real and say that there is an element of risk to all of this and seriousness that we're going to get into in just a moment. Guys, I put my money where my mouth is, right? I wouldn't come on here and talk to you about Tail of the Dragon if I hadn't myself made a run. And I want to show you this. Take a look at this Porsche 911 on Tail of the Dragon. Who's behind the wheel? That's your buddy CJ. This was actually my first run on Tail of the Dragon. I'm glad I was in this car. This car was a Porsche 911 Carrera S. This car had the rear axle steering, so four-wheel steering, right? This was the right car for me on Tail of the Dragon. This car was also equipped with the PDK, which is the Porsche dual clutch transmission. I didn't need to use my brakes a lot on my first Tail of the Dragon run. I'm glad I was in this car. I had plenty of brakes in this car. This car did not have carbon ceramic brakes, but more than enough brakes. I didn't have any issues with brakes overheating or pedal fade or any of that stuff. The car did very well. The car did better than me, if I'm honest. But and these are my photos, which I purchased through Killboy. We all know about Killboy. Shout out to Killboy, taking those incredible photos. That guy's got a history out there. Check him out on Tail of the Dragon. I'm grateful that I was able to buy these photos from Killboy, and I've got a bunch more if you guys want to see them. That's sort of my memories from my first Dragon run. So there's a shot of your buddy CJ on Tail of the Dragon. Have you done Tail of the Dragon? Leave me those comments. I want to hear about your experience. I'll be honest with you. My first Tail of the Dragon run, I was not ready. I got no problem admitting that to you. It was intense, and it was a lot. And at one point during my first run, I felt like it was a bit overwhelming, but I took it easy. I used my smarts. I didn't get myself sideways or in trouble. And I'm glad I did it. It was a great experience overall, but I'm not going to come up here and lie and tell you that it wasn't a lot, that it wasn't a bit overwhelming as a first timer. Nothing can really prepare you, I think, for a road like Tail of the Dragon. Do your research, find out what it's all about. I'm going to try to tell you about some of those key things you need to know tonight on this episode. But I would say go into this with the spirit of taking it easy, conservatism, and don't get yourself in trouble, people. Go easy. Guys, a couple of other things that I want to talk about. I really want to share a few of my recommendations for the guy or the gal who's thinking about heading to Tail of the Dragon. Should you do it? Yes or no, a decision only you can make. But I want to try to inform you a bit more. I told you a little bit about my first experience, but maybe tell you a little bit more and then also give you some of my recommendations that'll hopefully help you out with your first visit. Whether you're a car guy, and these are primarily probably more geared towards car guys. I'm a car guy, but might be helpful to the motorcycle dude as well. First things first. Are you ready? Is this thing on? Let me be real with you. Tail of the Dragon may not be a good experience for you. I want you to think long and hard before you decide to go. I want you to think twice about it. There are those that will probably say to you, oh, just go. It's the experience of a lifetime. If you're a real car enthusiast and motorcycle enthusiast, you need to go get your badge of honor. I don't wholeheartedly disagree with that, but don't feel pressured to go. It may not be the right thing for you. I'm going to say it again. If you are the type of rider or driver who likes a relaxing, chill cruise on a country road, or going and running errands in your performance car, okay, and that's about it, or maybe going to the Cars and Coffee, don't just jump in your vehicle and go to Tail of the Dragon without doing your homework and without being real honest with yourself. I'm going to be real with you. It's a very intense experience. And anybody who tells you it isn't, they're not being honest. You know, like, let's set aside the macho nonsense. Let's set aside the ego, okay? And we're all Mario Andretti and Dale Earnhardt, whatever. Yeah, no, you're not. And most people, your average driver, will be overwhelmed on a road like Tail of the Dragon, especially if they go into it with a full head of steam, thinking they're going to have like this amazing high performance experience. Go easy. Like, think about this, folks, before you make the run. Okay? And I'm not trying to scare you or talk you out of it. That's not my job. I'm not doing that. But I am being real with you. This may not be the experience for you if you don't like high intensity driving. It can be stressful. It can be dangerous. Okay? Especially, and this gets to my next point, if you go on a crowded weekend and it's your first time, you are going to probably have an aggressive driver or rider behind you who's going to be on you. Not always, and I'm not trashing anybody or bad-mouthing anybody who likes Tail of the Dragon and high-intensity driving. I'm not. I'm talking to the neophyte who maybe has never experienced anything like this. Let's be real. You might find yourself with someone riding your bumper, riding your tail, and you're just kind of holding on for dear life. I don't want you to be in that situation. That can be a very dangerous situation for anybody. And I know there's turnoffs, there's pull-offs, I should say. But when those are coming up quick and you got tunnel vision just trying to keep it between the lines, that can be a lot. Okay? So there's a suggestion to go during the week when it's less congested. I generally agree with that. But you still might have someone on you. So if you're going with a group, Make your arrangements. Find out what everybody's driving style is. Do you hang in the back or do you hang with a pack of dudes who are going to go slower and understand it's your first time? I mean, I've seen it. I've experienced it, not just on Tail of the Dragon, but on other roads where people get on you. They got no respect, no consideration, and they just get on you like they think they have all this talent and aggressive driving capability. And it's this close to something really bad happening. And I know several people who have wrecked on Tail of the Dragon. I don't know anybody who died, thank God, knock wood. But I know a lot of people who got messed up on Tail of the Dragon, okay, at various levels. Or they got into law enforcement trouble. They got tickets. I always say on these intense road trip experiences and these mountain roads, beware, you may run out of talent before you run out of horsepower. Don't run out of talent, before you run out of balls. Like, I'm serious, guys. Use your smarts, right? I don't want to see you get messed up, and I'm not trying to scare you, but you can get messed up in a bad way if you don't think about these things seriously. The other thing I'd say is motion sickness. Not a lot of people talk about this. I don't mind talking about it. First time I did Tail of the Dragon in other mountain roads, like I feel it. I get an intense motion sickness feeling. I'm not a guy that gets motion sickness a lot, but doing all those turns, I feel it. And if I do, I'll tell you what, I do another mountain run, and I will. I'll probably get like a Dramamine patch, Your passenger, and I've experienced this, your passenger, and I've heard this, and I've done mountain roads with friends and groups, and I've seen this where the driver's okay going through all the twists and turns, but the passenger gets sick. Maybe a Dramamine patch would help, but you got to talk about this. Who's going with you? Your wife, your spouse, your friend? Are they going to get grossly sick on the mountain road? These are things nobody's talking about. Or maybe they are. I don't know. I don't hear anybody talking about it, but I'm going to tell you about it. It's something you should think about it before going. There's such a narrow margin of error. There's not a lot of guardrails. Don't cross the double yellow, okay? The other thing I'll say is your vehicle up to the task? I have been on road trips in mountain roads with dudes who brought vehicles, I'm talking cars, that had no business being on Tail of the Dragon or any other intense road. They probably shouldn't have been on the road. The brakes needed service. The brakes were insufficient. The brakes started to overheat. Transmission started to overheat. Okay? They didn't have the right tires. They didn't have enough meat on their tires and tread. Don't do stupid things. Your buddy CJ's going to say it. If you need tires, brakes, transmission service, your car has soft spots, or your bike, don't go. And some of you guys are going to say, CJ, you're wasting my time. I already know that. Well, good for you. But there's a lot of guys who don't, and they do dumb things. I've seen it. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. I've seen it. Okay? I've seen guys, I almost lost it. My brakes were fading. Like, dude, when was the last time you serviced your brakes? You knew you had a soft spot with brakes. Why'd you bring it on one of the most intense roads in the country? And then you're going to try to push it and be the big shot? Yeah, not smart. That's how you end up rolled over off the road. That's how you end up in a tree. That's how you end up in the head-on. Don't cross that double yellow. Don't cross that double yellow. You know what my suggestion is? You ready? You ready for this? There are plenty of starter roads that you should try. I would suggest, if you've ever been to Cherokee Casino in North Carolina, there's a road going into the valley there. As you're heading to Cherokee Casino, twisty road, and it's nowhere near as intense as Tail of the Dragon, but gives you a taste. Gives you a taste for a few minutes. Try that road. There's another destination, Little Switzerland. Okay? Google it if you haven't heard of it. Look up Little Switzerland in North Carolina. Can't really go in the winter. There's not much to see. But again, take a ride up there during the week. See how you do with those roads. There's some intense roads there. They're not at the scale, maybe, as a Tail of the Dragon. If everything I just said applies, the things I want you to think about before hitting those roads, but it's at a smaller scale. It'll probably be less crowded. Okay. And you can kind of get a feel, and maybe for you personally, determine whether or not Tail of the Dragon is something you should do. Because while, I get it, there's a badge of honor and you want to be able to brag to your buddies. You want to be able to get the photos like your buddy CJ and post them on social media. I think that's cool. Okay? But it's not worth it if you get yourself in a very stressful situation where you're completely overwhelmed. I told you, and I don't mind talking about this. For me, I was like, wow, this is a lot. I had never done a road quite like Tail of the Dragon before. So, people had kind of told me about it, but I wasn't ready for it. When I say I wasn't ready for it, it was more than I expected. I expected it to be here. Tail of the Dragon was here. Here to here. Okay? So, listen, if you're a guy who does autocross and you do road courses and you do track days, you might say, CJ, give me a break. I'll do it all day long. Okay, that's good for you. I'll tell you another story. I went on a road trip. It wasn't Tail of the Dragon. It was another one with a group of guys, and we did some intense mountain roads, like right up there with Tail of the Dragon, I think. Let me tell you something. I was behind one dude, a friend of mine. That boy can drive. This dude can drive. Like, I'm probably your average driver. I'm a realist, right? I'm a good driver. I'm a safe driver. But in terms of intense driving, no, that's not my jam, right? Like, I don't claim to be a race car driver. I'm a car guy. I love driving my cars, but I'm a realist. Like, I'm a middle-aged dude, all right? My reflexes aren't what they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. But anyway, my buddy, this dude can drive. He drives the wheels off the car. He knows what he's doing. He's done track days. And he started going through the mountains, and I was right behind him, and I stayed on him. For about 4 minutes. And you know what I realized? I was staying with him. I backed off. I got out of it. I backed way off. He disappeared. He kept going. It was the right thing to do. Could I have kept up with him? Maybe. It wouldn't have been fun for me. It would have been really stressful. I was out of my water, and I admit it. At that speed, at that intensity, I was out of my water. And I was like, dude, back it off. And I did. And maybe that's a bit of wisdom because I have gray hair now and I'm older. But that's what I want you to do too. Don't get in deep water over your head, right? Do what's comfortable for you and don't try to keep up with your buddy. Now, I'd been on many mountain roads at that point. Again, I just knew that was too much. Like, back off, CJ. I didn't have any near misses or anything like that. But I knew that it was time for me to slow down. And I want you to have that realist moment too, if necessary, and be ready for it. And don't be ashamed of it. And don't be intimidated. If you're hanging with a group of guys and they're, and they're pushing you to go faster, don't hang out with that group of guys, not on the mountain roads. It's not funny. We all like breaking chops and having fun. Believe me, nobody does that more than me. But when it comes to safety, I think we got to do the right thing, and we got to be blunt and honest with each other and definitely with ourselves. So those are some thoughts on Tail of the Dragon. I want to hear from you. Leave me those comments. What's been your experience on Tail of the Dragon? Have you been there? Did I miss anything? Any other suggestions for our viewers? Are you thinking about going? Do you have any other questions? I'll answer. You guys know, listen, I love the feedback. I love the comments. I'll answer any questions I can. If I can't answer, I'll tell you and I'll find an answer one way or the other. But guys, that's about it for me tonight. Just want to come on here a bit and talk to you about the history of Tail of the Dragon, what my experience was like on it, and a couple suggestions from your buddy CJ. Guys, what do you think? I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I love and appreciate each and every one of my listeners. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, guys. Until I see you on the next one, be safe out there. Peace.